I thought it would be a simple romantic date. Instead, I found myself hiding under a stranger's bed, holding my breath, listening to threats of murder, and praying that no one would hear my heart pounding louder than the footsteps closing in. I work a regular office job, and between deadlines and daily stress, I barely have time to meet anyone. That is why I turned to a dating app, Plenty of Fish, hoping to find someone I could truly connect with. That is where I met her. She was my age, charming, and effortlessly warm in conversation. We hit it off quickly, and after a few days of chatting, she invited me over. She said her parents would be out that evening and suggested I stay the night. It felt bold and intimate for a first date, but something in the way she spoke made it feel exciting rather than reckless. I hesitated briefly, then agreed. It was the kind of moment I had been waiting for in this lonely adult life. Something real, spontaneous, and maybe even romantic. Little did I know, it would be the start of a nightmare. That evening, I had plans to meet her at what she called her parents' house. It was our first date, and though meeting at someone's home felt a bit forward, she seemed open and carefree. I tried not to overthink it. Still, I found it strange when she did not give me a clear address. Instead, she guided me step by step, as if intentionally. I had to drive through a dense forest with no streetlights, relying only on my headlights to light the way. I started to feel uneasy. It seemed unlikely that someone like her would live in such an isolated place. But she sounded so excited to meet me that I kept going, calming my doubts. Eventually, a grand mansion appeared. The house was extravagant, but decorated with ivory, antlers, and ornate cigar pipes. She welcomed me warmly. Then I noticed the guns mounted on the wall. She said they belonged to her father. That night, something happened between us. But that was only the beginning of something much darker. The sound of the front door unlocking startled both of us. She panicked and urged me to get dressed quickly and hide in the closet. Thinking it was just her father coming home early, I obeyed without question. Moments later, a man in an elegant suit entered the bedroom and immediately kissed her. I watched from inside the dark closet, heart pounding, completely confused. Who was this man? Why did she act like nothing was wrong? Then it escalated. He suddenly grabbed her neck and pinned her to the bed. His voice cold and demanding. "Did you betray me?" he asked. She laughed lightly and shook her head, trying to soothe him. But he didn't seem convinced. He pulled a gun from his coat and whispered that if he ever found out she had betrayed him, he would kill her, and whoever had taken her to bed. I froze, barely able to breathe. Every muscle in my body locked in fear. Through the narrow slit of the closet door, I pieced it all together. This man was not her father. He was something else, something dangerous. I realized I had been lured into a situation far more twisted than I could have imagined. When he stepped into the bathroom, I took the chance. My heart was racing as I slipped out of the closet. She reached for me, whispering something, maybe asking me to stay. But I did not even look back. I ran down the hallway, every step pounding with panic. As I pushed open the front door, the cold air hit me like a slap. I fumbled for my car keys. The engine roared to life, loud in the stillness of the woods. And that was when I made the mistake of looking back. There he was, framed in the window of her bedroom, staring straight at me. Our eyes met, and I felt something primal tighten in my chest. His gaze was not angry, It was calm, calculating, as if he already knew where I was going and how this would end. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, and my breath came in short gasps, but I managed to shift into drive. The car jolted forward. I sped through the gate and into the pitch-black woods. My headlights carved narrow paths through the trees, but the shadows seemed to close in faster. Then I heard it, a single gunshot echoing behind me. I ducked instinctively, swerved, but kept going. My entire body was shaking, but my foot stayed on the gas. I could still feel him watching me, even though he was nowhere in sight. Branches whipped against the sides of the car. I had no idea where I was headed. My only thought was escape. Then a tree appeared out of nowhere. I swerved too late. Metal crumpled. The world flipped sideways, then went completely dark. The last thing I remembered was the sound of the wind rustling the leaves and the sting of fear in my chest. I woke up in a hospital room that felt far too luxurious for a stranger like me. Confused, I asked who had brought me there, but the nurse only smiled and handed me my clothes, saying all expenses had been covered. Among my belongings was a folded piece of paper. On it, in neat handwriting, were the words, "I saw you. Stay healthy." A faint streak of red trailed across the bottom of the note. My chest tightened. I left the city that same week, erasing every trace of myself and starting over somewhere no one could find me. But peace never followed. I live in constant fear, always checking behind me, always wondering if he's still watching. Strange packages arrive at my door, unsigned. My sleep is broken. My mind frays a little more each day. I survived that night, but I'm not sure I ever truly escaped. He looked like a dream come true, but dreams do not follow you home. Nightmares do. I first met Liam at a cafe in the heart of the city. He was effortlessly charming with soft-spoken words and a quiet confidence that drew everyone in. As a first-year university student still adjusting to a new life, I felt flattered by the attention he gave me. He asked thoughtful questions, listened closely, and made me feel seen in a way that felt rare. There was something magnetic about him, the kind of presence that seemed to pull the world into his orbit. When he asked me out, I said yes, without hesitation. I told myself I was lucky to have met someone so kind and genuine so early in my college experience. At the time, I believed I had stumbled into something real. But now I understand that the most dangerous traps often come wrapped in charm. Our first date went smoothly at first. Liam was attentive and polite, the kind of guy who made you feel like the only person in the room. But as the night went on, he started to find excuses to touch me. A hand on my lower back that lingered too long, fingers brushing mine too often. When I politely pulled away, he backed off without protest, his pleasant demeanor never faltering. I appreciated that and thought maybe I had misread the signals. But the very next day, the messages started. At first, they were sweet, even flattering. Then they became constant, obsessive. He texted at all hours and called multiple times a day. The tone of his messages shifted quickly. "You belong to me," he wrote, followed by, "If you ignore me, I'll find another way to reach you." What once felt like romantic attention now felt like something much darker. The man I thought was gentle and respectful had begun to reveal a need for control that made my stomach twist. I started to feel watched, even when I was alone. After countless texts and calls from Liam, I finally blocked him on every platform. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking it was over. For a few days, the silence felt like peace. But one night, I returned to my dorm and instantly felt something was wrong. The door was unlocked. I clearly remembered locking it that morning before heading to class. My heart started to race. I stepped inside, calling out, but no one answered. The room was still and quiet. Then I saw it. Lying neatly on my pillow was a single red rose. Beneath it, a folded piece of paper. I opened it with trembling hands. It was handwritten. The message read, "You can't hide from me forever." Panic surged through me. No one besides my roommate knew my room number, and she had gone home for the weekend. I tore through the room, checking under the bed, inside the closet, behind the curtains. Nothing. No one. But the message was clear. He had been here. He had crossed the line from digital harassment into my personal, physical world. I bolted out of the dorm, hands shaking, my mind blank with fear. Every step I took echoed with the horrifying realization. Liam was not just obsessed. He was near, too near, and he knew exactly how to get to me. I reported everything to the police that very night. They reviewed the dormitory's security cameras and discovered footage of a man wearing a hood sneaking into the building earlier that morning. His face was hidden, but the way he walked was eerily similar to Liam. It was not enough to arrest him, but it was enough to scare me out of my own dorm. I packed my things and moved into a friend's apartment across town. The police contacted Liam and issued a formal warning. They told him that if he made any further attempt to reach or approach me, he would face legal consequences. After that call, he went completely silent. No more texts, no more appearances, nothing. But I could not go back to who I was before. The relief of being left alone never came. Instead, I lived in constant vigilance. I checked the windows every night, locked and relocked the doors, memorized emergency contacts, and made sure I was never alone after dark. Even in the safety of my friend's apartment, I kept a chair against the door while I slept. The experience changed me. I no longer felt carefree or trusting. The fear that he might return never really went away. 1 year later, I met another girl. She was new on campus and told me about a guy named Liam she had just started dating. The details hit me like a wave. The charm, the attention, the sense that it was too good to be true. I could see it starting all over again. But this time, I did not stay silent. I told her everything. I helped her contact campus security, report him immediately, and put safety measures in place before it could escalate. I refused to let him ruin another life the way he almost ruined mine. I might never feel completely safe again, but I had finally taken something back. My voice. I came to understand that Liam was never in love with anyone. Not truly. He did not crave connection or affection. What he craved was the thrill of the chase, the secrecy, the control. He was not looking for a partner but for prey. The more you pulled away, the more fascinated he became. It was never about who you were, but how well you could be hunted. I used to wonder what I had done wrong, what made him fixate on me. But now I see it had nothing to do with me at all. It was always about him, his obsession with power, and his hunger for fear disguised as love. He did not want a relationship. He wanted a performance where he played God, and we were all just trapped in his twisted game.
I thought it was just beer. But when I woke up, everything was gone. My wallet, my passport, even my memory. For years I lived a peaceful life as the head of sales, at a mid-sized company in the UK, the result of relentless effort and ambition. But one morning, I looked around and realized this was not the life I wanted. At 29, I quit my job and set out to travel the world. I wanted stories, colors, chaos, and freedom. In Colombia, under the warm glow of string lights at a salsa festival, I met Maria. Her smile was radiant, full of life and mystery. We danced, we drank beer. We laughed like we had known each other forever. She leaned in and said she knew a better place, quieter than the crowded square. "A hotel," she said, "not far from here." I hesitated, but something in her eyes pulled me along. I followed her, thinking I was chasing a fleeting romance. I had no idea I was walking into the unknown. She smiled brightly as she poured more beer from a bottle that had already been opened. The taste was strange, more bitter than I remembered, but she raised her glass before I had time to question it. I drank, partly out of politeness, and partly because the way she looked at me made me feel like the only person that mattered. We wandered through narrow streets lit by flickering lamps. My steps grew unsteady. Maria held my arm gently, but her eyes had changed. No longer warm, they were detached, watching me like I was no more than an object. She stopped talking. She simply led me into a dark alley. My memory fractures after that. I recall peeling walls, the smell of rust, and the slow drip of water somewhere in the distance. When I tried to speak, my mouth was dry, my voice reduced to a groan. I woke up alone in a strange hotel room. My head throbbed violently. My phone, wallet, and passport were gone. A red mark circled my wrist like a faded rope burn. Maria had vanished, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember her last name. The police confirmed that I had been a victim of a scopolamine scam, a drug known for turning people into walking puppets. Under its influence, I might have handed over my PIN, withdrawn money, signed documents, and done it all with a blank face and no resistance. Worse, I would remember none of it. Almost everything in my bank account was gone. I sat in the police station staring at the report, trying to process what had happened. My hands were cold. My heart pounded not just from fear, but from humiliation. I had always considered myself cautious, even sharp. Yet here I was, robbed blind and drugged like a tourist stereotype. I felt ashamed to call my family. I didn't want to admit I had trusted a stranger, followed her, and let my guard down. I looked at myself in the mirror in the station's restroom and saw someone I barely recognized. Not just tired, but broken. I kept thinking how easily it had all happened. One smile, one drink, and my life unraveled in a matter of hours. I wondered how many others had suffered the same fate. Most of all, I wondered what would have happened if I had never woken up at all. The bank refused to take responsibility. The police simply shook their heads and told me I should have known better than to trust strangers in a country I barely understood. I only recovered a small portion of the stolen money after threatening to involve international media. But the nightmare did not end there. Ever since I left Colombia, I began to dream about Maria. In the dreams, she stands at the end of a hallway from a hostel I once stayed in. She never moves or speaks. She only stares at me with lifeless eyes and a twisted smile that grows wider each time. Some nights, I wake up gasping for air, convinced I felt someone gripping my wrist, right where the red mark used to be. The sensation lingers even after I turn on the lights and find myself alone. I cut my trip short and returned home earlier than planned. I tried to convince myself that I was lucky to have survived, but I didn't feel lucky. I didn't feel like myself anymore. There was something off in my reflection. My eyes no longer held light. My skin looked dull, as if it had aged rapidly overnight. Each time I looked in the mirror, I felt like my face was sagging, melting slowly. When I closed my eyes to sleep, I felt my body dissolve into the mattress, as if I was fading away piece by piece. Panic gripped me. I visited a doctor. Blood tests, scans, and evaluations followed. Everything came back normal. The doctors assured me the drug had long left my system. They said there was nothing wrong with my body. But I knew something had changed. Something was still inside me. Something I could not explain. I am lost in myself. I look in the mirror and no longer recognize the person staring back. The life I once knew feels like a distant memory, and every day since that night has felt like borrowed time. I wake up uncertain of who I am and unsure of what parts of me still belong to me. I try to tell myself that I survived, that I am safe now, but safety feels like an illusion. The laughter I once had is gone. The ambition, the joy, the trust in the world, they all vanished with that one drink. I do not know what lies ahead, or if I will ever feel whole again. Each sunrise brings more questions than answers. I keep moving forward because I have no other choice. But deep down, I am afraid. Not of what happened. I am afraid of what I am becoming.
I know I shouldn't have stopped at a rundown motel in the middle of the night, but my car was dying, and I didn't have another option. The main hotels were all booked, and the only thing with a vacancy sign was a flickering neon Pinewood Inn just off the highway. It looked abandoned from the outside, half its lights dead, the paint peeling off like old skin. But I was too tired to care. I just needed 4 walls and a bed. Nothing fancy. I didn't realize until later. I wasn't the only one staying in room 9 that night. The front office of the Pinewood Inn looked like a time capsule from the 70s. The air inside was thick with the scent of dust and stale coffee. Behind the desk sat a middle-aged woman with thinning hair and a cigarette dangling from her lips. She didn't look up until I cleared my throat. "Only got 1 room left," she muttered. "Room 9, end of the row." I asked if it was quiet. She paused, then said, "Sound travels in that room. If you hear anything strange, just ignore it." Her words stuck with me as I walked across the cracked pavement toward the room. The place was eerily silent. No other cars, no sign of life. Room 9 sat at the very end, tucked beneath a flickering security light that buzzed like a dying fly. The key was an old brass thing on a faded tag. When I pushed open the door, a sour smell hit me, something between mold and bleach. The carpet was stained, the mattress sagging, and the curtains half hung on their rod. But I was exhausted. I locked the door, threw my bag on the chair, and told myself I'd be gone by morning. I didn't expect to survive the night. I was half asleep when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping, 3 knocks, then silence. It was coming from the wall behind the bed. I sat up and listened, heart rate picking up. Another knock, slightly louder this time. I tried to dismiss it, probably pipes, or the building settling. But then I heard something else. A whisper, low and breathy, like someone murmuring just behind the wall. I couldn't make out the words. I got up and checked the window. No cars outside. The rooms next door were empty. I was the only guest on this end of the motel. When I turned back toward the room, the television screen flickered on, even though I never touched the remote. It flashed static for a few seconds before cutting to black. My nerves were shot. I paced around the room, trying to ground myself. That's when I noticed a piece of paper jutting out from under the bed. I crouched and pulled it free. It was a scorched photograph, an older teenager or young adult, face pale and eyes hollow. The photo had deep scratch marks across the eyes and mouth. Something about it felt violently personal. I dropped it, and the knocking resumed. I jolted awake at 3:47 a.m. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I was suddenly sitting up, drenched in cold sweat. The room was freezing, even though I hadn't touched the thermostat. The air felt heavy, unnaturally still, like everything had paused just for me to notice. That's when I realized the blanket had been pulled off of me. At first, I thought maybe I kicked it off, but when I sat up to grab it, I saw something at the foot of the bed. A tall figure, completely still, looming over me. Before I could scream, it raised a finger to its lips. Shh. I froze. Not just in fear, my entire body locked up. I couldn't move my arms or legs, like I was pinned to the mattress. The figure leaned closer. I couldn't see its face, only the outline of something tall, bony and angular. It whispered, "Don't make a sound. I don't want to hurt you. Just tell me, where's your wallet?" I choked out, "In my jeans, on the floor." The figure straightened, shuffled toward the corner where my jeans lay crumpled. I heard it rustling through my pockets, then the quiet zip of my wallet being opened. It asked, "What else is in here?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. A moment later, it said nothing more, just left. I heard the door creak open, then shut again. I lay there for several minutes, heart pounding, afraid to even move. When I finally forced myself up, I ran to the door. The lock was still jammed, but the chain had been snapped clean off. That thing didn't break in. It had already been inside. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the corner of the room, knees to my chest, eyes locked on the door, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Every creak of the old building sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt like breath on the back of my neck. I kept telling myself I had imagined it, but the empty wallet on the floor said otherwise. At first light, I grabbed my stuff and practically sprinted out of room 9. I didn't even bother to check out properly. I just tossed the keys through the slot in the locked front office door and ran to my car. But before I could leave, I stopped at the gas station near the highway to fill up. I looked like hell, sweaty, pale, eyes bloodshot. The clerk, a woman maybe in her 40s, glanced at me and said, "You staying at the Pinewood?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Room 9, I muttered. Her face went blank. Then she leaned in and whispered, "That place shut down last year. They found someone dead in the wall. Maintenance guy noticed the smell. Turns out it was a drifter who tried to hide in the crawl space. Got stuck. Took days for them to even realize." I told her that couldn't be right. I had checked in, gotten a key, spoke to the woman at the desk. She shook her head slowly. "There's no woman. The front office has been boarded up since the fire." My hands started to shake. I looked down at my palm, still holding that old heavy motel key. I hadn't left it behind. Somewhere between room 9 and my car, it came back with me. I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't call the police. I didn't want to know anything more. I drove straight home and threw the key into a river on the way, hoping that would be enough. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep in silence. Every creak in my apartment made me jump. I kept the lights on. I taped the door shut at night, and even then, sometimes I'd wake up to find my blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed, like someone had been there again, watching, waiting. I never figured out what really happened in room 9. I don't care to. But if you're ever on a lonely road and you see a cheap motel that looks like it's barely standing, keep driving, no matter how tired you are. Some places aren't abandoned because they're empty. They're abandoned because something never left. The snowstorm came out of nowhere. I was driving back to Chicago after my grandmother's funeral when the highway shut down completely. Zero visibility, every exit blocked. The only option I had was an old roadside motel called Mid-Pines Motor Lodge, just barely visible through the whiteout. It looked deserted, like no one had stayed there in years. But the neon vacancy sign was on, flickering in red. I told myself it was just one night. A warm bed, a locked door, then gone by morning. I didn't realize. I'd just checked into a room built without mirrors for a reason. The lobby of Mid-Pines Motor Lodge was strangely quiet. The floor creaked beneath my boots, and the air smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant. Behind the counter sat an elderly man with paper-thin skin and watery eyes. He didn't say much, just handed me a brass room key labeled 12 and mumbled, "You're the only one here tonight." As I glanced around, something felt off. There were no mirrors anywhere. Not behind the counter, not near the vending machines, not even in the little restroom off to the side. "You guys don't have mirrors?" I asked, half joking. The old man didn't laugh. He just looked up and said, "We got rid of them. Stopped showing what they were supposed to." I brushed it off, assuming it was some weird local humor. I took the key and trudged through the snow to room 12, the last one at the far end of the building. Inside, the room was basic: queen bed, nightstand, old TV, bathroom to the right. But what caught my eye immediately was a long curtain covering something on the wall across from the bed. I had a sinking feeling I already knew what it was hiding. I tried to ignore the curtain at first, but curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it aside and found exactly what I suspected: a mirror. Large, rectangular, and cracked straight down the center. Someone had attempted to fix it with strips of black duct tape, but the glass still shimmered unevenly, like water disturbed. The moment I looked into it, something felt wrong. My reflection was there, but it wasn't quite right. My movements were just a touch delayed, like a badly synced video feed. I leaned in. So did it, but it moved smoother than I did. Too smooth. Uneasy, I covered the mirror again and tried to go about my night. But the air felt heavier now, like something else had entered the room. Around midnight, I started hearing a faint tapping. It wasn't from the door or window. It was coming from behind the curtain. Then I heard a whisper, almost like my own voice, but tired, hollow, drained. "Let me take your place, just for a while." I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The mirror had gone quiet again, but I could feel it. Something on the other side was watching and waiting. I woke up suddenly, heart pounding, with no idea why. The room was dark, pitch black, not even the standby light from the TV. I reached for the lamp, but it wouldn't turn on. Nothing worked. It felt like the power had been cut, or worse, like time had stopped. That's when I noticed it. The curtain had been pulled aside again. The mirror was fully exposed. I knew I'd covered it. But now, it wasn't cracked. The tape was gone. The glass looked flawless, polished, perfect. Too perfect. I sat up slowly, staring at my reflection. It stared back, but didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't twitch. Then it smiled. I didn't. I stood, and it stayed seated. Then, as if relaxing after a long wait, my reflection stood up slowly, its movements just a bit too fluid, too graceful. It raised one hand to the glass and pressed against it. The surface rippled like water. "You're tired," it said in my voice softly. "I can live for you. Just sleep." I backed away, legs trembling. It stepped forward inside the mirror, pushing harder. Fingers began to emerge, long, greyish, almost rubbery. In panic, I grabbed the metal trash can and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered, exploding in a rain of sharp fragments. The figure vanished in an instant, swallowed back into the shards. But the smile, I still saw it. Not in the mirror anymore, just scattered, etched into the broken pieces on the floor, like it had burned itself into the glass. I couldn't stay there another second. Something in that mirror hadn't just been watching me. It was ready to take my place. I threw everything I had into my duffel bag, not caring if I left anything behind. I just needed to get out. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip it. I left the room without turning back, crunching over the broken glass with every step. The hallway outside felt colder now, like the heat had been sucked out of the building completely. I ran straight to the front office to tell the old man what happened. Maybe get help, maybe just scream at someone who'd understand. But when I got there, the door was open and the room inside was completely empty. No desk, no lamp, no chairs, just a single mirror on the far wall, shattered just like the one in my room. That's when the truth hit me. There had never been anyone at the front desk. I don't know who or what gave me the key. I sprinted to my car and peeled out of the parking lot without looking back. I didn't stop until I had cell service again. I called my cousin, rambling, barely making sense. When I mentioned the motel name, he cut me off. Mid-Pines, that place burned down 5 years ago. Total loss. There's nothing left. I slammed the brakes, pulled out the room key still in my pocket. Room 12. Same logo. Cold to the touch. I looked in the rearview mirror. For a moment, just a second, my reflection blinked a little too late. It stared back with a calm, knowing smile. And this time, I wasn't sure if I was the one sitting behind the wheel, or if something else had made it out of the mirror instead of me. I don't stay in motels anymore. Hell, I barely sleep in rooms with mirrors. Something about them just feels wrong now. Like I'm not always the only one looking back. After that night, I smashed every mirror in my apartment. People said I was paranoid. Maybe. But sometimes when I catch a glimpse of myself in a window or the screen of my phone, I swear my reflection holds the stare a little longer than I do. So here's my advice. If you ever check into a room and notice there's no mirror, don't go looking for one. If you find a mirror that's been covered up, leave it that way. And if your reflection ever moves out of sync, even for a second, run. Because once something gets out of that glass, it doesn't just want to look like you, it wants to replace you. I work night shifts at a small roadside motel in rural Oregon. Nothing fancy, just a front desk, 10 rooms and the occasional stranded traveller looking for a bed. It's a quiet job most nights. But there's always been one rule I was told on my first day. Never rent out room 3. No explanation, just a thick red line drawn through it in the booking ledger and a paper sign taped to the door that reads, "Out of service." I followed that rule for over a year, until one stormy night, when a man came in begging for that exact room. It was just past 11 p.m. when he walked in, soaked from the rain, no luggage, hood up, eyes darting toward the hallway behind me. The storm outside had knocked out half the power, and the place was barely lit. He looked like he'd been running. "Just need a room," he said quickly, voice low, facing the lot. "Preferably room 3. That made me pause. "I'm sorry, room 3 is out of service," I replied, like I always had. But the guy leaned in, urgent. "I need that room. I need the door facing the road, no neighbours. Please." He was shaking, either from the cold or something else. Against my better judgment and breaking the one rule I was told never to break, I gave him the key. He grabbed it without another word, walked straight down the hallway, and disappeared into the darkness. A strange feeling settled in my chest the moment the door shut behind him. Not guilt, unease. I stared at the monitor showing the hallway cam. The feed flickered, then went black. Room 3 had never had issues with that camera before, and something told me this wasn't a simple case of a guy needing shelter. About an hour later, I was sipping stale coffee and flipping through the motel logbook when I noticed the hallway camera for room 3 was still out, just a black screen with faint static. I tried resetting the system twice, but the feed wouldn't come back. The rest of the cameras were fine. Just that one. Out of curiosity, I pulled up the recorded footage from earlier when the man entered. The video showed him walking down the hallway alone, slow and stiff. But the audio, that's what got me. There were 2 voices, his and someone else's. Faint but distinct, like he was talking to someone just out of frame. The second voice was low, whispery, like it was right behind him, murmuring things I couldn't quite make out. I paused the footage. My heart was pounding. The camera only showed one person entering, but there was definitely something, or someone, else with him. Then I heard it, a thud, followed by a dragging noise. From the hallway, from room 3. I stood up, every instinct screaming not to go. But I walked to the door and leaned out, listening. The light above room 3 flickered once, and then I heard it, breathing, right behind the door. I approached the door to room 3 slowly, the carpet muffling my footsteps. The breathing on the other side was steady, but wrong, too slow, too deep. It wasn't the man I'd checked in. It sounded heavier, like something with lungs too big for a human chest. I raised my hand to knock, then froze when I saw something move under the door. A shadow. Not feet, fingers, long and splayed, creeping slowly into view, like someone or something was lying flat on the floor inside, pressed up against the door. I backed away, fast. Back at the front desk, I watched the blacked out feed, hoping for anything, even static. But then, for just a moment, the screen flickered to life. It showed room 3's door wide open, and the man standing outside of it, facing the hallway wall, perfectly still. His arms hung limp, his head tilted slightly, like he was listening. Then the screen glitched again, this time showing him standing inside the room, facing the mirror, alone. I rewound the tape 3 times. Both versions were there, like 2 separate recordings overlapped, showing 2 different realities. One where he was still outside, one where he was already inside. And yet, he had never walked back out. That was when I noticed something else. In the mirrored footage, the man's reflection wasn't matching him. It smiled. He didn't. And the reflection, it started moving toward the door, leaving him behind. That's when the hallway light above room 3 exploded with a pop, and the camera went black again. I don't know what I let into that room, but I knew something else came out. By 4 a.m, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know if the man was still in there, if he was okay, if anything was left of him at all. I grabbed the master key and made my way down the hall, flashlight shaking in my hand. The air grew colder with every step toward room 3. The carpet felt damp. The lights above barely glowed now, like the electricity was being drained. When I reached the door, it was slightly ajar. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. From the gap, I could see inside. The room was empty, bed untouched, no bags, no clothes, no sign anyone had ever been there. Except one thing, a wet footprint on the tile facing the mirror. I stepped back, shut the door without a word, and locked it. When I returned to the front desk, I checked the logbook. The entry for room 3 was gone, like it had erased itself. The key for room 3 was back on the hook. Still damp, I pulled up the security footage again. This time, there was nothing. Just the hallway, no man, no door opening, nothing at all. It was like that entire night had been cut out of reality. Except for me. I was still here. I remembered. And every night since, around the same time, 3:17 a.m, the light above room 3 flickers, and I swear I hear footsteps pacing behind the door. I haven't opened it since, and I never will. I still work here. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe I just want to make sure it doesn't happen again. Room 3 has stayed locked since that night. I changed the locks, nailed the door shut, even covered the peephole. But every now and then I still hear breathing on the other side. And sometimes, when I'm the only one in the building, I'll catch a glimpse of a shadow slipping past the end of the hallway. So here's my advice. If you ever work the night shift at a motel, if there's a room that's always marked out of service, don't ask questions. If the booking ledger skips a number, let it. And if someone ever begs you for a room the motel supposedly doesn't use, say no. Because once something steps into that space, it might not be the one that walks back out, and neither will you.